Welcome back to Commanders Call, everybody. Your home for astute coverage of the Washington Commanders. Ben and I are here to talk about press conferences and staff and a lot of things with the Commanders moving forward. Ben just wrapped up the Super Bowl. What'd you think?
I mean, it was a good game. Went how I was hoping it would and how I thought it would. Seattle, the game was close the whole time, but Seattle really did dominate in every
Yeah.
facet of the game the entire time. The score didn't break away until the end, but it was very clear if you watched the game who was in control the entire time.
Yeah, it was one of the best defensive performances I think I've seen on that stage in a long time. And they got it done with the run game, and Sam Darnold did just enough to help his team to victory. So that was pretty cool, pretty fresh type of Super Bowl. I mean, with Seattle, not really so much the Patriots, I guess, but it wasn't the Chiefs, and the Eagles all over again. So yeah, a little bit of a lackluster, I guess you could say, but Seattle's a great team, and they definitely deserved it, and proved that you can win with a running game too.
Yeah, I think that if we're going to think about what does the Super Bowl mean for Washington, you saw pretty much the whole playoffs. It was a great defenses. The better defense won pretty much every game of the playoffs. And even if it wasn't the better defense, they were always great defenses. Like the Patriots beat three top five defenses to get to the Super Bowl just to play another top five defense. And their defense wasn't too bad themselves. So all the people saying the defense just needs to be average if the offense is great, I do agree. But this playoffs may have showed something different for us. And maybe the defense is the important part that we should focus on. But every team's built different. The Rams made it that far with a about average defense and a great offense. But I'm just curious what your thoughts on that are with what the narrative around our team has been in terms of what we need to succeed.
Yeah, it kind of seems like year after year, when it gets down to the end of the season towards the Super Bowl, it's really the deep, well executing defenses that prevail. And you saw that in Seattle. I mean, I don't think I can count on one finger the amount of flaws I saw from their defense, not only in the Super Bowl, but maybe in this entire playoff run for them. And I think it really boils down to obviously you have to have the players and the personnel to make it happen, but you have to be bought into. And all the players in Seattle seem to be very bought in on what Mike McDonald has brought there and the way that he coaches it. And I think that if Washington has any chance of replicating that or something similar, because I do agree with you, you do need a strong defense when it comes down to the end of the year, like resilience. Like you can have flashy players, you can have guys with all the talent in the world, but in the fourth quarter, third quarter of the Super Bowl NFC Championship game, what guys are going to hit that sixth gear for you and really dig deep in crunch time and show the grit that it takes. We'll get into it a little bit later with Daronte Jones, but service value wise, he seems like someone that is good at building culture around him, and I think that's where it starts. The basis of any unit on a football field is building the culture and being very intentional, not to take a little bit out of Dan Quinn's book there, but be very intentional with the direction that you want to move forward and implement that and follow through with everything. So, the excuse me, the margins in the NFL are razor thin. We all know that. And but it's very obvious to see when you see a defense or any unit for that matter execute the way that they planned to originally in the spring and summer and going into the fall.
Yeah, and we'll get into a lot more that the kind of defenses we're seeing are a lot different than the kind that have been successful in the past. And I think Mike McDonald, his defense, he brings a lot that, like when Dan Quinn was coaching those defenses in Seattle that was making it to Super Bowls, that was the new innovative defense. And we're seeing that again where it's a new innovative defenses. And we'll get into a little more what that looks like later when we talk about Daronte Jones. But it's kind of the reason why you can't just have any defensive coordinator come in and all of a sudden have a good defense. So
Right.
it was a great game. It showed offenses were two quarterbacks that typically didn't turn the ball over a lot, and you saw the one that did turn the ball over a lot is the one that ended up losing. And I feel like we're almost getting away from the $70 million a year quarterback is what you want to win with. It seems like we're gonna kind of shift back to the serviceable quarterback with a good roster era. So that'll be interesting for us in 4 years when that contract starts hitting for Jaden.
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk about that in
We'll
four
talk about that
years
then. Yes, you're right.
because I don't know if I agree with that. An elite quarterback still is
But
very,
if you look
very
at the
valuable.
Patriots, that roster's a lot better than the quarterback is.
Yeah,
So at
but
least this year we saw a lot of rosters carrying.
Do you think Sam Darnold's gonna keep his team in playoff contention year to year? No.
That defense, I think, is going to keep
The
that team in
defense
playoff
will,
contention year after
yes.
year.
But
And
if
all
they
Darnold has
had
to
an elite
do,
quarterback, that it'd be more likely that they could continue this year to
for
year.
sure, I think it's
Yeah.
not necessarily, it's going to be less about having an elite quarterback and more about not having to pay an elite quarterback. It's
Yeah.
going to be, the teams are going to be really focused on getting that guy, that like a Sam Darnold, who is fringe top 10, probably top 15, but is making less than top 10 money. But he's just good enough to not lose the game for you,
But you don't
like a
often
Joe
see that
Flacco
hit. I
type.
mean, look at last year. Jalen Hurts has a big contract. He won the Super Bowl. I mean, I feel like you see more big name quarterbacks win Super Bowls than you do journeyman quarterbacks.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, the thing
and
about Mahomes won one after getting his contract, but those first two is when he's still on his rookie deal.
sure, I mean,
So,
obviously you're gonna have more money to put talent around
right.
quarterback when they're on the rookie deal, but also like I really don't like the stigma of, oh my God, we only have this small window to win with our
Oh, for
quarterback.
sure.
Like that's just not true. Like it's not. And I can see both sides of it, but and we are getting a little off course here, but we'll talk about that later on down the road. All right, everybody, just to go over what we're going to do in this episode. First off, we're going to run down everybody that's in the coaching department now because there has been a lot of movement back and forth, and we did touch on that extensively last episode. But there have been a few changes in the little couple days that we've released our last episode until now. From there, we'll go into our analysis of the press conferences for David Blough and Daronte Jones, and then we might talk about a little bit of random stuff at the end. But we'll get there when we get there. Stick around; got a lot to talk about. Okay, so the coaching staff is starting to get pretty well rounded out. If you listened to last week's episode, then there really won't be many surprises to you. I'm just going to go ahead and run down really quick what the staff looks like, and at the end of that, I'll highlight a couple things that stood out to me. Starting with Brian Johnson, he's 6 rounds, your assistant head coach, offensive pass game coordinator. They have running backs coach Anthony Lynn, and I'm just going to say it now. This one actually does stand out to me a little bit because he was listed last year as the run game coordinator and is now just listed run game coordinator and running backs, and now he is just listed as running backs coach. I don't know if that's potentially like something David Blau is going to be taken over, or if potentially they're going to bring somebody else in as a run game coordinator. That's yet to be seen, and yeah, so still on the staff, which is good, and somebody I wanted to keep around for continuity with the rest of the offense, and David Blau as a safety net for him as somebody who's been a head coach and an offensive coordinator in the past. Assistant running backs coach Jesse Madden, John Madden's grandson. Always thought that was pretty cool. Linebackers coach stays Ken Norton Jr. Outside linebackers John Pagano. Tight end coach David Robb, which is very good. He works very closely with David Blau. Special teams coordinator Larry Izzo sticks around. Assistant special teams coordinator Brian Schneider. Offensive line, as we touched on last week, Darnell Stapleton. Daryl Tapp goes to assistant defensive line coach, as we spoke about last week. Assistant offensive line Shane Taub. Assistant offensive assistant Wes Welker, and quarterbacks coach DJ Williams. Now, we talked last week, Ben, about how Willie Gay might leave with Jason Simmons and Joe Witt Jr. for Pittsburgh, where he played a lot of years. I think won a Super Bowl or two with them as well. He actually got promoted to defensive back and cornerbacks coach. So Willie Gay sticks around. Then you have your analytics guy, Dave Gardy. Eric Henderson, obviously, we touched on him last week, is your defensive line coach. Last couple, we have assistant linebackers coach George Banco, assistant wide receivers returners coach Andre Coleman. Now, this is one that I think that's going to maybe bother people a little bit as of right now. Today is Sunday or Saturday rather, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day to all the lovers out there. Tommy Donatel is currently still listed as defensive back and safeties coach on the team website. All right. So I don't know if he's still sticking around or not, but right before we got on to record this episode, Ben, I saw a tweet from Mike Zenitz, who is a college reporter for CBS Sports. It says the Commanders are expected to hire LSU safeties coach Jake Olson, sources tell CBS Sports. He worked at LSU for the past 2 seasons, helped the Tigers finish this past season ranked top 25 nationally in scoring defense. So perhaps this college coach, Jake Olson, is taking over for Tommy Donatel. That is yet to be seen, though. So that really wraps up our roster of coaches. How are you feeling about that, Ben? And do you see any more changes coming along the way?
I don't see anyone else leaving. So I think Tommy Donatel's here. They could bring in the Olsen guy from LSU as just a defensive quality control coach, defensive assistant, even just to be an assistant defensive backs coach. Because, like you mentioned, we're keeping William Gay around, and he got a promotion to cornerbacks coach, and Tommy Donatel got reassigned to
Right.
safeties, and they're both the defensive backs coach. So
Yeah.
there's not really an assistant in that room. So maybe you bring in a guy like Olsen to be that like assistant defensive backs coach to help them both. Just have like another guy in that room. Maybe you have him here to take over for Donatel next year, and but just to keep a little bit of that consistency around. The only other one we didn't mention is bringing in Danny Etling as the assistant quarterbacks coach. He was with Blau at Purdue. Um, not I don't think there's any one name on here that really stands out because a lot of these are promotions, like guys that were offensive assistants last year,
Right.
like Jesse Madden is just gets the upgrade to assistant running backs coach, and like what is it? Pagano. Yeah, John Pagano was just like a defensive quality control coach, and now he's taking Kerrigan's job as the outside linebacker coach.
Right.
And I think even like the assistant linebacker coach, trying to find that name quick. It was
George
George
Banco.
Banco. Yeah, he like we didn't even have an assistant linebackers coach last year, and he was just like another defensive assistant, just getting a promotion and title just to have more responsibility and see what they can do. Maybe give
Right.
Ken a little assistance now he's getting up there in age. Maybe have some sort of succession plan.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's pretty cut and dry at this point, and other than the press conferences we're about to discuss, I don't really see a whole lot to go over. I don't. I kind of think at this point I'd be surprised if they added another offensive consultant, even though
Yeah,
there is nobody with the title of run game coordinator. But I know that David Blau is like pretty like a huge part of his game is
right.
coordinating the run game. So I kind of would tend to think that that is a role that is going to be rolled into his offensive coordinator position.
Yeah, and I'd assume it's just something to do with Anthony Lynn. They like how he teaches the running backs, but maybe his scheme more closely aligns with how Cliff runs the ball
Okay.
and not with what they want to do next year. I can't say
Yep.
that for certain, but if I had to guess, because if they don't think he did a good enough job to stick around, they just fire him. But maybe
That's
they
true.
like, hey, you did great. We like having you around, but we're looking schematically, we're going in a different direction. Kind of like Bobby Johnson. He did good enough to stick around, but they want to go in a different direction schematically. So you could even see the offensive line coach, Darnell Stapleton. Maybe he helps out with the run game designing too, but I don't think we need a specific run game coordinator maybe right now. And the
Yeah.
only one that sticks out would be the lack of a pass rush specialist on defense, because that was something that we heard they were interested in bringing in. Because Kerrigan was the outside linebackers and pass rush specialist, and now we only have an outside linebackers coach. So if we're going to bring in another person, I could see it being for that. But other than that, I feel like the staff's pretty full.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't really think there's a whole lot more to touch on there. We can go ahead and get into the press conferences. Stick around, everybody. The Washington Commanders held the introductory press conferences for new offensive coordinator David Blough and new defensive coordinator Daronte Jones on Tuesday in Ashburn. I was pretty impressed by both of them. Both very different type of, I don't want to say interviewees, but public speakers rather. David to me seemed I saw somebody refer to him as cerebral. I don't want to use that as like my own original term because it's not, but I agree with it. He seemed very, all of his responses seemed very well thought out and genuine, as did Daronte Jones, just in different ways. Ben, why don't you go ahead and get us into some bullet points? We'll start with David Blau's press conference first.
So the first note I made on David Blau was that he's not a natural interviewee. He seemed very awkward up there. A lot of ums and likes, and he started off his first six answers with a very awkward "sure." So I thought that was a funny note to add on. We are talking about what kind of public speaker they are, but he definitely has that nerdy personality, not trying to be the center of attention. And then he went right into talking about all the great coaches he's been around, and he's been around a ton, going back to Detroit, Ben Johnson, Anthony Lynn, and getting into Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell and Ben Johnson, of course, towards the end of his Detroit run, and then getting into Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, was under Cliff for a long time. Even if we let go of Cliff because we didn't like what he did for us here, he's still a great offensive mind. He's got some good things to pull from. And he went into the difference play calling can make. And I think this is something a lot of fans don't get, and they do get at the same time, is we all know and understand what play calling means. And anyone can hold a play sheet and call plays, but the importance of situational play calling is really important, and it's really valuable and something that a lot of smart guys don't seem to understand. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that idea of play calling too, while we're on that subject.
I think that he's a very smart type of guy, and I think that maybe that just doesn't translate to press conferences, which is no big deal. I'd much rather him be better at calling plays into the quarterback at the right time of the game as to being able to tell Nicky Javala from The Athletic, a story. Um, as it goes to play calling, yeah, like I totally agree with that. Anybody can call in a play, anybody can have a game plan, but it's how you execute the game plan and it's the choices that you make at certain times in the game that can affect the future of the game. You always have to plan two, three, four steps ahead of the play that you're calling right now. A lot of times these guys they go out in the huddle and they've got the next three, four, five plays or selections of three, four, five plays based upon what situation this play is going to put them into next. So I think it's a very fine art, and he seems like again a cerebral enough guy to where he can turn that art into an art piece of a masterpiece is the word that I'm looking for. So yeah, a lot of positive encouragement from that aspect, and kind of piggyback off that a little bit. There's been a lot of talk about Jaden Daniels going under center and how much more this will open the offense up. See, I don't see them. I see the offense changing pretty significantly from Cliff's offense, but I do think that we're going to see more shades of Cliff's offense on a regular basis than people may think for at least this next year while Jaden gets used to transitioning into a new offense. I think that that might be like a period of what's the word I'm looking for where they're weaning him off of that one
Yeah.
offense into a different offense. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
highlighting his strengths while also pushing and challenging him to learn new things such as going under center. And I'm just gonna come out and say it. I don't think Jaden's gonna have an issue with that whatsoever. Like the way that he practices and the way that he is so anal about his processes and the way that he takes care of himself and just his love and study for the game. I wouldn't be shocked if he's been practicing this since the day the season was over and they kind of knew that Cliff wasn't going to be there anymore. Um,
And jumping right into that same
yeah,
point, David Blough did talk about those last 4 weeks Jaden missed. He was playing scout team, running what other offenses are going to run, and practicing those under center snaps and getting that work in before the season even ended. And I do think, like, I agree with you, we're going to see a transitional period. But for example, what that transitional period might look like, the Rams ran 250 snaps under center last year, by far the most in the league. We ran 17 snaps under center the entire season. 45 snaps in the last 2 years combined under center. The lowest team this year, other than us, was the Chiefs at 45 this year alone. So I do think we're not going to be looking at 250 under center snaps like the Rams,
right.
but we might be looking at 45, 50, 60, 4 or 5 a game under center just to get Jaden used to it because 17 under center snaps in a season is ridiculous. It's
Yeah, and it really limits your offense when you come out and shotgun every play. Like just like surface value wise, like when you're running from under center formation, it gives your running back time to actually run first before having the ball in their hands to create some momentum. I feel like we saw a lot of stops behind the line of scrimmage, especially on like third down where we would be like
Mhm.
inexplicably in three wide pistol. And he would hand the ball off after a delay and they just get tackled in the backfield. And I'm not saying that like pistol or shotgun is not effective in many aspects of the game, but like to piggyback off of last week, I feel like a big and what you said earlier, situational football. Like I feel like Cliff was very staunch on his script of the game or his theory of what of his offense in this particular game in moments where maybe he should have gone off script a little bit and done something different. And
Right.
I think that that's going to be a major change this year that hopefully we see, pretty early because it just wasn't working for 6, 7, 8 weeks. It seemed like it was the
Right.
same thing over and over and over again. There was no adjustments. It felt like I was watching like Jay Gruden's defenses at halftime, like no adjustments whatsoever. And
Yeah.
you know, I think when we say like halftime adjustments, a lot of people think more of like defense, but it also matters for offense too.
Yeah. I think that like with the under center stuff, a lot of it we only ran it in short yardage and like goal line situations. So one, you're kind of tipping your cap to the defense, what you're lining up to do.
Right.
And two, a lot of successful play action in this league is built off of under center.
Yep.
And if you're not running it from under center enough, then you can't build a play action off of an under center run game because you can't set up something that you've only ran 17 times the entire season.
Yep.
So, which leads into another thing that David Blough has said in his press conference. Maybe his, kind of key word was, let me find it right here, make the same things look different and different things look the same. And this is what a lot of the great OCs in this league do. They run the same exact run out of five different formations,
Hmm.
and then they run a different play from the same formation, five different plays from the same formation. So you don't
Disguises.
know what's coming at you.
Right.
And then you
Yeah.
can again build off that. You bring that run out, you run that run four times, and you line up the same way, run that same run, pull the ball, bootleg out to the right if it's like a run to the left, and you have a little check down right here because your linebacker's been on that run because he saw it coming because he knows what you're running because he's seen it four times.
Overall, Ben, do you feel confident with David Blau moving forward, or do you how like what's your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say right around that. They always say seven is a cop out answer to use from out of 10. So I'll say eight,
Okay. Oh,
just
all right.
because I feel like six is too pessimistic. Different conversation. But they say seven's like the cop out because it's kind of good but average.
Right.
So if you're willing to go higher than seven to an eight, that means you're really, impressed. But if you're not willing to go quite to seven, you want to go to that six, that means you're not quite as impressed. I'd go eight. I'm a little concerned, because he talked a good game. I like the things he said. We don't really know if he's going to be good at it until we get to the season. Like he can know what he needs to be good at and not end up being good at it. So it's just to be determined, but I'm confident he's smart enough to figure it out.
Yeah, it's very hard to gauge this because the scale is so vast. Like it's either going to be like true hit or miss, you know.
Yeah,
If he succeeds, it's
boomer
going to be in
bust.
fantastic fashion. If he fails, it's probably going to be in dramatic fashion, you
Yeah,
know. And hopefully, I think at the end of the day, when it's all the dust is settled after 2026, we're going to see somewhere probably in the middle of that
right.
where he's going to have struggles and he's going to have triumphs. It's just how are they going to keep him level, you know? And I think that's what the guys like Bobby Johnson and Anthony Lynn and even DQ and heck, even Marcus Mariota, hopefully if he's back, like will be there for, to kind of keep him at least at a level place because just as much as Jaden Daniels' growth is important this year, so is David Blau's.
Yeah. And I would say my favorite comment that David Blough made, and this was not specifically in his press conference, but it was in a one-on-one sit down for a news station, is he said this offense will be built around how do we get Terry the ball 10 times a game, or at
Yeah,
least 10 plus targets a game. When's the last time we had an offensive coordinator that said that? Because if you
never.
go back to Scott Turner, Eric Bieniemy, Cliff, it was always the scheme. The scheme will dictate who gets the ball. Well, that's not how an NFL offense works when you have a true number one receiver. And I still think Terry can be that. He hasn't necessarily shown that, but I don't think that's his fault. But the scheme should be how do you get your best guy the ball, not, oh, well, the guy will get the ball based on the scheme. Because there should be no game where Noah Brown's getting 12 targets and Terry gets three. And I just don't really care what the
A
scheme
Robbie
says.
Chosen.
Right.
God, I can't remember what game it was last year, but I think Terry was back and Robbie Chosen or one of the other
I want to
guys.
say it was like the Dolphins game. I feel like the Dolphins game, Robbie
Yeah,
got a
it
lot
was.
of
And Robbie
action.
Chosen had like 13 targets and Terry had like two.
Yeah, it's just
And
like
I
it
was
feels
like,
like
what
Cliff's
the heck is going on, man?
well because not to get into why Cliff isn't here anymore, but it was the big complaint we heard about him coming from Arizona is he does not switch what side his receivers are on.
Yeah,
So you just Terry's on that left side no matter what. Focus your attention over there, and you don't care if Noah Brown or Robbie Chosen or Chris Moore or
Chris
Jacoby
Moore, yeah.
Jones gets 35 targets a game. They're not going to do anything with it. So we need a number two receiver that can do something with the ball, and we need to get more creative on how we get Terry the ball. Like that screen against the Lions in the divisional game last year, and he took it like 60 yards for the touchdown. That was a creative way to get Terry the ball and let him do something with it. So we just need if that's what David Blau is going to focus on, because he also had a quote very similar that this offense is going to be built from the ground up. Because he is a new coordinator with no playbook. He's not bringing something with him that he's trying to force on these guys. He said this offense we built from the ground up around what Jaden, Terry, and Laramie Tunsil and the rest of the guys, but those are the three best offensive players of what they do best. So that's what I'm excited for, is a scheme built for our players and not trying to force our players into a bad scheme.
Are there any other bullet points you'd like to go over with David Blau?
I think the last one maybe would be valuable is he gave off a list of names of quarterbacks that this staff has worked in because he's talking about, Danny Etling and DJ Williams, the new quarterback coaches, and then himself, of course. And so I'm just going to list off a couple of names. So we have Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, and Kyler Murray. Now I threw Kyler in there as almost like an odd man out. When you look at the style of quarterbacks that these guys have worked with and been around, it's very much that in the pocket, under center, beat you with your mind style quarterback, except for Kyler. And so I think that to me that shows I don't think that's what we want. We don't want the offense that's, Kyler Murray runs like Cliff was trying to put on Jaden. I think he's going to be looking more towards that Brady, Rodgers, Brees, Stafford, Goff, Kirk style, stay in the pocket, use your mind, find the open guy style of quarterback.
It'll definitely be a mixture. I just think that maybe Kyler Murray couldn't handle that type of offense because
And I
it's
totally
it's
agree.
Kyler Murray. Um, and they're definitely not just going to have Jaden standing in a pocket all the time for people
For
that are
sure.
listening to this. It's just, I think he said it best. Like, have the offense run itself and make smart, quick passes to the point where Jaden doesn't have to be Superman all the time, you know?
Yeah.
Like play conservatively and take your shots when you get your shots. You know, it doesn't have to be Jaden running for his life or, hucking deep balls every single play, like situational football. And I think that's what
Right.
they're going to get back to. For the sake of time, let's go ahead and get into Daronte Jones. Daronte Jones, hired from Minnesota Vikings. He was their defensive backs coach, pass game coordinator. Um, I really enjoyed his press conference a lot. Something that stuck out to me was and then we touched on last episode about maybe potentially switching to a base 3-4 defense. I believe John Keim asked the same question, and he chuckled a little bit and said, "It's not how you line up, it's where you wind up." And that makes a lot of sense and kind of goes back to what we were saying in the last episode, where a base defense is just exactly what it sounds like. It's a base defense. It's not what they're going to be running out of all the time. It's going to be an ever shifting amoeba of players. I was very impressed by him. He didn't seem to go with all the buzzwords that Joe Witt did. He didn't seem to be like overly rah rah with like fake enthusiasm, which is like a
Right.
really fine line. I feel like, especially in sports. I was happy about it. It made me very cautiously optimistic, and I really like his highlight of players, especially
Yeah.
first player out of his mouth was Frankie Louvu, who we also touched on last week, and we said we'd be very excited to see him in this potential new defense if they're going to play the way that we're playing. So Ben, let me hear some things that stood out for you from Daronte Jones.
Yeah. We talked about it off the record and you touched on it, but his press conference just felt so real. We've heard good conferences before, but you're right. They had that raw, overly excited, I'm here to talk a big game kind of feel where Daronte
Right.
Jones has felt like this is how I am. I'm calm, I'm cool, I'm collected. I'm not yelling buzzwords at you, no matter how hard Scott Abraham's trying to get him to. Scott
That's what he
Abraham, Fans do not love buzzwords. We love real, big, genuine
At this point,
statements that mean something.
we've
We
had a
want
lot of
value.
buzzwords over the
Yes.
years.
Buzzwords are not valuable. And I think that's kind of what Daronte Jones spoke about. And when asked for a buzzword, he gave joy. He said, "You'll feel joy watching this defense, and the players will feel joy playing in this
I
defense."
was not expecting that, honestly.
No,
When he
it's not
said joy, I
typically
was
a
like,
word you
wait,
hear for
what?
defense.
I like it though.
I do love it. I love
He
it as well.
wants
It brings me
guys,
joy.
he wants guys that, and you know what that tells me? He wants players that love to play the game first and foremost. And I
Yes.
think that's like where the foundation of his defense starts. And I think that's why he used that term.
And I can tell why DQ fell in love with Daronte Jones because he had to talk about relationships with players for 28 minutes of that 35-minute press conference. Going back to Bowie State, talking about how he'd feed those guys, give them rides, go to class with them to make sure that they weren't missing classes. And he said, if you feed these guys, they'll run through a brick wall for you. And obviously, you don't need to feed NFL athletes, but if you get them playing well and making millions, you're feeding them and you're feeding their families. So if he can get these guys playing well and making more money, then they will run through a brick wall for him and do whatever he wants them to.
Yeah, I really liked how, going back when I said a couple minutes ago, I really liked how he highlighted a lot of the players on the team. Excuse me, namely Frankie Louvu, Kane Madrano, who was, if you listened last week, I said that there was another player that had a similar skill set that I wouldn't mention yet, and that player was Kane Madrano. Um, who else did they mention? Mikey Sanders still,
Yeah. My
Trey
favorite is
Amos.
he said the team's filled with young and fast players and versatility. And I think that's ironic because us watching the game, we don't see that because those
Yeah,
players don't play. And so I think we all kind of chuckled at that a little bit. But the players Sainer still, he pointed out Quan. He talked about
Will
whether
Harris.
he's a corner, a nickel, or a safety. And I know
Yeah,
we talked about that a little bit. He talked about Will Harris, Jordan McGee, Javon Kinlaw with his versatility on the D line, Trey Amos, and Kane Madrano. And I do agree that him highlighting Madrano, I mean, he is young and fast. We talked about it. He doesn't really have a position yet. He was a former wide receiver. He played
yeah.
linebacker for a year or two, and he was really more athlete than position.
He's more of a
So this is a
safety.
guy, right? This is a guy that you could maybe teach to pass rush a little bit and put him on the edge, and he can play that base 3-4 where you don't know if he's to drop in or if he's coming. So I super excited by the fact that he felt the need to point him out. He did talk about Tyler Owens a little bit, Jeremy Reeves, to talk about their versatility. Man, Tyler Owens is just talk about young and athletic and
Yeah,
not really having a position. If Daronte Jones can unlock anything with Tyler Owens on defense, I mean that man's like what, 6'3", 6'4",
yeah.
230 pounds, or in like
He's
a
a
four
large
three
man.
40. He's huge and he's fast. And if you can get him doing something like Nicky Manori was doing in Seattle this year, just athletic freak who can kind of hover in that safety box nickel spot. I mean, man, that would be special.
Yeah, going back to what you said about being surprised that he said about the offensive or defensive young talent, I actually like was at first, and then I thought about it, and I was like, maybe we're a little too close to the situation when he laid it out like all the players they had.
Yeah,
Granted, like I know a bunch of people are mad about Quan Martin. He's had his fallacies, but he's also shown us on several different occasions like he can play. So like when Daronte Jones laid out those names, I was like, you know what? Like they do have young talent on this team to work with. It's not
we
like
just don't let him play.
completely barren. Like we just don't know what how Joe Witt like suppressed the development of some of these players. Like
Right.
I would wager to say that like it had a really it had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see what he's going to do. And you might have seen I tweeted a couple days ago how he was talking about Kay Madrano, and I pulled Kay Madrano's physicals and I pulled um, Andrew Van Ginkel's physicals, and I put them side by side, and they're an inch difference in height and maybe 12 pounds. Very
That's crazy.
similar skill set of player
Yeah.
when it comes to athleticism. Granted, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say Kay Madrano is going to be Andrew Van Ginkel. Do not get it twisted because
Right.
I'm not. I'm just highlighting the fact that they have very, very similar physical attributes, and
Yeah.
perhaps we can see Daronte Jones help mold some of these younger guys into viable NFL options.
And while we're on that subject, he talked about developing IEPs for every single player on the
Yeah, I
defense. For
liked
those who
it.
don't know, individualized education program. It's typically made for kids with some sort of ADHD or learning disability. And in a school setting, you might get an hour extra on a test. But for this setting, you're really just saying, I think you're good at this and you're bad at this, and I want you to be able to do this better, or I want you to work on how to hide this weakness. And to draw that out for every single player on defense, I mean, man, let's just talk about the time, the dedication, that's the smartness to watch the film and be like, oh yeah, this is what this guy's good at. This is what he needs to work on. And like I said, for every player on defense that he hasn't even been around yet, I mean, I'm just excited for the idea of the teaching. And that's a big thing DQ always stresses.
Right. Yeah, I'm excited too, man. I mean, the guy talked about he's been everywhere. He's coached at every single level. He was homeless at 23 and homeless again at 33. Had to sleep in his car both times. But it was necessary to help him get to the level that he's at. And he also one thing that really stuck out to me, he said that there really isn't a defense out there that he hasn't been a staff on.
Right.
Like so he it's going to be really hard to pinpoint exactly or even label like what his defense is going to be like because it's going to be a mixture of everything from the high school level all the way up to the pro level and everything in between. And that's exciting to me. And that tells me that not only has he played in all and coached in all these defenses, he's also seen how many different types of situations in the beginning of the game, end of the game, middle of the game, in the off season. Like and he's still got tons of energy and he's still young. Right?
Right.
It's a really intriguing, exciting hire.
Yeah, I know people were not thrilled about Joe Witt being an older coordinator, for the older for a first-time coordinator. And Daronte Jones isn't much younger, if younger at all. I believe he's 47. He's been coaching for 26 years. But if you look at Joe Witt, he's been a defensive backs coach for the last 15 years in the
Yeah.
NFL before getting this shot. Daronte Jones had to truly work his way up. Like he's been growing every year since he started coaching, where Witt kind of plateaued out. He reached that height of being a really good positional coach, but no one willing to give him the chance at a coordinator spot. And so he just kind of stagnated. Where I do think that even though Jones is older for a first time coordinator, he's been growing. And I think that this isn't something that he's not going to be ready for.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see moving forward, going into free agency, what guys they target and who they bring in, and then, the draft from there. There's a lot to be excited about, and we're going to see a lot more changes between now and September. But if you made it this far, thank you for sticking around. That's all the time we have for today, but we'll be back around the combine to discuss, maybe have a guest on to talk about some prospects we could be looking at the combine and in the draft that's coming up in around, I think, 75-ish days from now, Ben. It's going to come up fast. So, going to have a lot of content in between then and now, or now and then, rather. So, thank you for coming and like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. For Ben, I'm Sam. Keep your left hand up.